To hell with the date on your birth certificate. Let's talk about what we have in common across generations. Life, sex, and tech at any age. Welcome to Age Blind with Nancy A. Shenker.
Hey, it's Nancy A. Shenker of Age Blind fame. Not famous quite yet. And today I have an amazing guest who is also a close personal friend of mine, the lovely Tonya Mack. And we are sporting our hot pink today because we are just those kinds of women. So before we get started, let me just again give you a little bit of background of why I changed the name of the podcast from The Geezer Proofer to Age Blind. My focus is going to be on things that we have in common across generations. So Tonya and I are almost a decade and a half apart, but one of the many, many things we have in common is, as you can see, we both like fuchsia. That is something that bonds us together. And I met Tonya at an event, a women's event, where it was pretty obvious to both of us that we didn't quite fit in. We didn't belong. And that's why the title of this episode is The Only MOFO at the Table, because Tonya and I have both been in situations where we really just didn't fit. And that's okay. You're not going to fit everywhere all the time. So a little bit about Tonya. She's obviously a woman of color if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, I'm telling you. She's an Air Force veteran, and she's an affiliate sales rock star. She is selling for Rodan and Fields and is now bringing another product service into her mix. And as somebody who was always kind of hating on MLM, she has really taught me that there's some high quality people who work in that sector. And as for me, if you're watching on YouTube, it's kind of obvious. I'm a white, somewhat liberal Jewish woman from New York. I'm a former corporate executive. I have my own marketing company, and I'm a mother and a grandmother. So if you just looked at our profiles on LinkedIn, you would say, what the F are these two people doing hanging out?
How did they meet?
But we both found ourselves in Arizona, and we have a lot in common, in addition to the fuchsia thing. We have no tolerance of bullshit. We have a drive for success. We have a sense of humor. We like to do the same kinds of social activities. We talk to each other multiple times a week, and when we're having challenges, we always bolster each other. We're both fairly spiritual, even though we are of two different religions, and we both have thrived in careers in a man's world.
Absolutely.
Which is something that we also have always had in common, is the whole sense around women's empowerment. But that said, we also have been the only MOFO at the table. Tonya and I have both experienced microaggressions, micro-exclusions, and macro-exclusions throughout our careers. Tonya as a member of the armed forces, and me working in financial services for many years, and being the only woman in an environment that very often was all male. And so we learned over time how to deal with both the little exclusions and the big exclusions. And the really scary thing about social exclusion, and I did a little bit of research on this because I always like having my facts, is that it can lead to depression, anxiety, and even physical health issues over time if you're constantly in situations where you feel left out or less than.
Or uncomfortable, yes.
Exactly. So today we're going to talk about a few of the things that we've been through in our lives and in our careers, but because we're trying to keep things positive, we're really going to focus on things that you can do in your daily lives if you're ever feeling like the odd man, the odd woman, the odd person out. So first, we're just going to go through a couple of examples of situations where we've been in that have made us feel like there's something wrong with us or we don't really belong. My first example happened way back in the late 70s, early 80s. And when I tell people, they say, no, that didn't really happen, but it did. I was at my first sales conference. I was a woman of maybe 24. I came into a cocktail party in a dress that I thought I looked perfectly appropriate in. And the sales director, who was 2 levels above me at the company, looked me up and down, gave me what's called elevator eyes, and said, you look good enough to rape. And again, that would probably not happen today, although maybe it would. But I was like totally blown away. It was my first professional event. And I'm like, is this okay? Is this how women are supposed to be treated in the workplace? And it was a real shocker. But I think experiences like that kind of toughened me up and gave me the ability to operate in situations where I really felt like I was being marginalized. Mm-hmm. So, Tonya, do you have an example of something that happened in your career?
Absolutely. I think I was probably about the same age as you, maybe 24-ish. And I've always been aware, come on, that I am a double minority. But the first time that it was really, I was aware of it was when I was in college. I was taking some college courses and I walked into the room, got settled, and you know how you look around and just kind of see who's in the room. And I realized that I was the only Black person in the room. Fine, no big deal. We're going on about the lesson. And then some way, somehow, the conversation turns to broken households and the ghetto and this kind of thing. And everybody turns around and looks at me as if I can relate to those things.
I'm sorry for laughing, but it's...
Like, really? I don't know what I know what the ghetto is. Have I experienced that? No. Did I come from a broken home? Absolutely not. So why would you turn around and look at me versus someone else in the room to identify with the ghetto and being from a broken household?
Yeah, so two great but unfortunate examples. And it's something that I became very aware of not making people on my team feel left out.
Right.
And one of my favorite stories is I had an all-woman team at MasterCard save my operations director. And one day we were out at lunch and the women got into this conversation of feminine hygiene products. And I had to stop them and say, can we talk about something that Larry knows something about? Because being marginalized like that made me very aware of people who felt like they didn't quite fit. And then fast forward to very, very recently. So for those of you who think that we're way more woke now and shit like that doesn't happen, I was on a call with an ad agency and their research firm. And they were presenting the results of the research. And the research director said, and I quote, "We only focused on Gen Z because boomers will be gone soon." To which I took myself off of mute and said, where am I going? Are you the Grim Reaper? Because, I'm a boomer, I'm 68 years old, and I plan on living and working for another 30 years.
Yeah.
And I was writing the report. So to basically say everybody over the age of 60 is on the verge of death is just like misinformed and biased and ageist. So
sad.
One more example from you, Tonya, and then we'll get back into the positivity zone.
Okay, so being in the military, I have prided myself in not shying away from hard things. And, in order to progress, you have to kind of check certain boxes and that kind of thing. And there was one particular time where there was a specialized class that you needed to take in order to advance, and you had to compete for it. And people in my career field at that time, my background, usually didn't get selected, but...
Because you're from the ghetto, right?
From, this little Black girl from the ghetto. Anyway, I got selected and I was super excited about it. But then I was also a little nervous, to be honest, because I knew that I was going to be in a room with the best of the best. You have to be selected for this thing. So, okay, I get there. And once again, guess what?
I'm the only mofo at the table.
Only mofo at the table. But this one goes a little further. We had to kind of, play sports and socialize and, barbecue and that kind of thing. Mandatory fun, we used to call it. And the guys were grilling hot dogs and hamburgers and drinking beer. I'm the only chick out there, really out of my element, but okay. And they were grilling the hot dogs. And some were burned. I like burnt hot dogs, by the way. But one of the guys, who probably didn't even realize what he was saying, said something to the effect of, wow, those burnt hot dogs almost look like your fingers. And I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. But of course, that stayed with me. And he probably, I'm sure, I never said anything to him because I didn't want him to feel horrible. Because had I said that, I'm sure he would have. But for him to even say that and not even be aware, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I've dealt with all my life.
And even if you are, white from an upper middle class household, mainstream religion, I'm sure you can all think of something from your past, from going all the way back to elementary school, family gatherings, where you just felt like an outsider.
Yeah.
And so we've all been there. So how can you deal with it? We're now going to talk about 5 ways to deal with those situations. Again, it's something that we both have been dealing with most of our lives.
Absolutely.
And again, we want to keep this podcast positive and useful for people of all ages. So my tip number 1, we're going to have 5 tips because, as you may know, my new podcast, I'm all about the listicle. My tip number 1 is to kill them with kindness and humor. And as long as you have a smile on your face, people will not feel threatened or defensive when you're giving them that kind of feedback.
I know.
It's something that has served me well through most of my life. And I just have learned that when somebody says something that, when you hear our stories, you go, oh my God, that's outrageous. And if you get on your high horse and you start lecturing them about woke sensibility, they're probably going to dig in that much further. But if you kill them with kindness, you give them feedback with a smile on your face, then I found it to be a better strategy.
I love that. I love that tip. And I agree wholeheartedly. Because there are times where if I came across as the, quote, angry Black woman with my head rolling and those kinds of things versus just talking to a person like regular, it would not be taken as well. And I fight so hard to fight against those stupid stereotypes that they're out there about Black people, Black women. So my tip is to prepare yourself for being in those kinds of situations. That first time in college, I was not prepared whatsoever, but I definitely took note of that experience and prepared myself because that was the first and definitely not the last time that I was ever in a situation where I was the only MOFO at the table. So now I've come to expect it and I know how to respond in situations like that, especially when they approach me with stupid stereotypes.
It's funny you say that because I was talking yesterday to Jessica Wiederhorn, who's the president of a nonprofit that you and I are both involved with. And we're talking about how you even prepare fashion-wise to go into a situation. That if you come in a power suit with big shoulder pads and, an angry puss on your face, and you're in a room of old white men, you may get a more negative reaction than if you come in, you could still wear the power suit, but put on a floral blouse underneath or something with a little frill to at least let them know that you're, playing at their table, but that you have a soft side too, which when it comes out of my mouth, that sounds disgusting, but first impressions are formed based on how you're dressed, how you act, how you carry yourself.
Absolutely.
And we are not men.
No.
We are Devo. we are not men. We are women. So zhuzh it up a little bit, exert your power, but be your own person.
Yeah,
exactly.
show them that there's a person under the suit,
And the other thing that I learned very early on in my years in financial services is your facts. If you spew out quantitative proof of what you're saying, if you know your numbers, if you know the answers to questions, if you don't look up at the ceiling and get all girly and up talk, people will take you more seriously as a professional.
Absolutely. I agree 1000%. The other thing that I wanted to add to that is be very aware of who you are and what you bring to the table, because a lot of times in those situations, you may be tempted to shrink back and, stay close to the wall or not be in the mix. But I challenge you guys to be in the mix and own who you are and know who you are and realize that you bring something of value to any and everybody, regardless of their background, how they were raised, their color, all those things. You bring something to the table, and not just to your specific ethnicity or background. You're a valuable person with things to add, and don't be shy about that. Own it and be in the mix.
And heal very quickly. You know, there used to be this great TV series called Heroes, and one of the lead characters, the cheerleader, her superpower was she knew how to heal when she got hurt, either, physically, and I always think of that mentally. If somebody insults me, if I feel small, if I feel less than, I always just visualize how she was able to just get up, push her compound fracture back into her skin and just get right back at the table and
dust your shoulders off.
Exactly. And most important, which is tip number 5, is to find a like-minded and supportive community.
Absolutely.
And again, going back to how Tonya and I met, we were both at this event. We were kind of looking around. We're like, do we really fit in here? She and I just started talking and vibing, and we realized that we were different from everybody else, but that we have then since formed our own community. Hopefully it's more than just 2 people. It is, but who really support each other and are able to talk openly and honestly about stuff like this. And if you have stories that you would like to share with us, please reach out. I'll give you my email address in just a little while. And then last but not least is bonus tip number 6, is that as you go through your daily professional life, personal life, always think about those people who are sitting alone, standing alone, not talking to somebody, not participating in the conversation, and reach out to make sure that they're okay, because they may be feeling like the only mofo at the table. There are a lot of us mofos out there,
right,
and we need to hang together and support each other.
Make them feel welcome, walk up to them, say hello, and encourage them to be part of the conversation or in the mix, because a lot of times that's all somebody needs.
Yeah, and you don't need to go overboard. The analogy that I draw, because these are our Halloween fear episodes, is, go to that kid at the back of the mob when they ring the doorbell on Halloween and make sure that he's getting or she is getting candy in their basket too. But you don't have to overcompensate and give them
extra candy.
Right. Don't give them 100 Twix. You could still give them 1 and just smile and make them feel welcome. And the same applies to our adult lives.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Tonya. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, it's my absolute pleasure. And I applaud you for talking about topics that may not be popular or hard to discuss. A lot of times people may not experience the things that we talk about, but someone is. So I'm proud of you for even having a conversation about it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And Tonya, just talk a little bit. I mentioned that you are a Rodan and Fields affiliate rep, and one of the reasons my skin looks so lovely at 68 is I'm using the RNF serum that Tonya sold to me. I'm now addicted.
I love it.
I'm like, I'm out of serum. Get me more serum. And just talk a little bit about your new venture, which is also around looking good and feeling good.
Well, okay, I'm not ashamed to say that I'm 51 years old, and I am enjoying my life and living my best life. And I always try to remind people that aging really is a privilege, and you can look good doing it, taking care of your skin and taking care of your health. My new venture is called Make Wellness, and it's all natural peptides that help you when you're experiencing some of the things as you get older. Of course, for as long as I can, I want to build and maintain muscle. I want to get rid of extra body fat, and I want to be focused and energized throughout my days, because all of us have several things on our plates that we're juggling. So my precision peptides will handle those things, and I'm super excited to share it with everybody who's aging and let them know that they can age gracefully.
Awesome. If people want to reach you,
yes.
How would they find you?
They can find me on Facebook. I'm just under Tonya Mac. There may be several, but there's only one Tonya Mac. So look for this mug. And on Instagram, you can find me at LadyTMac42.
Excellent. And if you have questions, if you want to share stories, if you have suggestions for future episodes, you can reach us at Nancy A. Shenker, Shenker, @gmail.com. And we're booking guests out through the end of this year, beginning of next year. We already have our themes lined up. November will be gratitude. December will be gifting and friends and family. And stay tuned for what's coming in 2025. Lots of exciting stuff. Shout out to Industrious, who has given us this lovely podcast studio. This is the first time I'm recording live with a guest, so thank you for being the guinea pig. And to Kyle Decker, our producer extraordinaire, who a few minutes ago was crawling under the table to plug in stuff.
It was hilarious.
Big shout out to Kyle. And please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. The name of my company is The On Switch, TheOnSwitch. I'm pretty easy to find. And again, listen in. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to see our lovely faces of the only two mofos at the table today, but not always.
In our hot pink.
Yes, exactly. We're on YouTube, and feel free to subscribe. Keep that fan mail coming. If you like what you hear, please rate us, and see you next time. Peace out.
Take care.
Yes.